Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Underwood. I'm the Community Initiative Specialist for the Missouri Historical Society. I want to thank you so much for joining us virtually this morning for this installment of the STL History Live series. Today's program is Pride Story Sharing with your hosts Sharon Smith and Ian Darnell, and our panelists Gilberto Pinella, Jay Shepard, and Chris Kleindienst, who are all going to share with you their personal stories and experiences and perspectives on Pride celebrations. But before we get started with that, I want to share a little bit of information with you. The Missouri Historical Society hosts 2 to 3 of these STL History Live programs every week. You can check out the lineup on our website, which is mohistory.org, or you can also find it on the Missouri History Museum Facebook page if you go to the events section. Coming up next is Parading Patriotism, Independence Day Celebrations in the Urban Midwest, 1826 to 1876. Which is a part of our Soldiers Memorial Chow and Chat series, and that's tomorrow at noon. And then you can also join us again Thursday evening at 6:30 to hear Colin Brown discuss his new book, Citizen Brown, Race, Democracy, and Inequality in the St. Louis Suburbs. Yeah, that's right. Also, I want to take a moment to express a little bit of gratitude. I want to say thank you to all of our members for the support that you give us now and always that help keep our programs running and our exhibits up and running. And if you're not a member, but you would like to consider membership, if you enjoy the kinds of things that we offer to you, I would encourage you to check out our membership offerings, and I'll go ahead and post a link for that in the chat that you can copy and paste to find out more. I also want to recognize the support of the Zoo Museum Tax District with a big thank you to everyone who lives in the St. Louis area for your tax contributions. At the end of today's program, we will have some time for Q&A. You can submit your questions through the Q&A button that's probably at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar there. And we'll have limited time, but we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can. And if you want to go back and watch this program later or see any of our STL History Live programs, you can find those on the Missouri Historical Society YouTube channel, and those get posted on the Monday following the program. So 2 final quick things. We are providing closed captioning today. You can turn those on in your toolbar as well. And finally, you'll notice at some point during the program, there should be a survey that pops up in a separate tab for you. We would love to get your feedback. It really is important to us. So at the end of the program, please be sure to go to that tab, take a minute or 2 to fill out the survey and let us know what you think. And we really appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and get to the program today. I'm going to turn the screen over to Sharon Smith. She is our curator of civic and personal identity, and she's going to share a little bit with you first about our LGBTQIA collecting initiative and our upcoming Gateway to Pride exhibit. So Sharon, thank you.
Thanks, Emily, and welcome everybody. Very quickly, you'll see on the screen before you the Gateway to Pride logo, which is a fairly new piece for us. It was introduced earlier this year, and we had hoped to do quite a lot with that logo already this year, including a small exhibit that we were going to have in the museum. But with the quarantine and COVID and all of the craziness that's been going on, that Gateway to Pride Atrium exhibit will now move to a virtual experience this fall. We'll start to see some of that rolling out hopefully in October for Gay History Month. So keep that in the back of your mind. But what this Gateway to Pride is all about is a collecting initiative, not just for an exhibit, but also to keep the stories of the LGBTQIA+ communities here in St. Louis and the region alive and well, and always at a place where people can research them as well as find their selves, all of ourselves in this space as we move forward into the future. So we'll be talking a little bit more about how you can donate to that initiative as we get to the very end of this program. But without further ado, I do want to turn it over to Ian because we have such a full program today. And Ian's going to do a whirlwind, several seconds, if you will, in relative terms, history of Pride in St. Louis. So Ian, take it away.
Yeah, so today is the last day of June Pride Month, and the topic of our conversation today will be people's experiences with Pride in the St. Louis region. But before we did that, we thought it might be a good idea to do a lightning quick survey of the history of Pride. So Pride is a commemoration of the Stonewall riots, sometimes also called the Stonewall Uprising or the Stonewall Rebellion. And that was a confrontation between police and protesters in New York in June of 1969 following a police raid on a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village. Then the next year, in 1970, there were protests and marches and demonstrations organized in cities across the country to commemorate the anniversary of that rebellion because it was considered such an important turning point in the LGBTQIA plus movement, a time of renewed militancy and visibility and pride. Now, Pride celebrations came a bit more slowly to St. Louis. We know that there was an automobile parade for Pride in the early 1970s and a few other events locally. Where the tradition really picked up was in 1980, when we had what was called the Walk for Charity, the first march or Pride parade in the St. Louis region, and a whole week of events. Here are two pieces from our collections that document some of those landmark events in 1980. Since then, the main Pride celebration in St. Louis has moved from Forest Park to Tower Grove Park to downtown St. Louis, and other Pride traditions have emerged, like the annual Black Pride Festival, Tower Grove Pride, St. Charles Pride, and Metro East Pride. So there's a rich and complex history here in St. Louis, and we'll get to hear about that from our panelists today. So Sharon will now introduce our three wonderful panelists.
Okay, and yes, we are so thrilled to have these three panelists with us today. You know, and there are many people that have many more stories, and again, that's partly what we'll look forward to as we get into this collecting initiative more in the coming months and years. But today we are thrilled to have these three. Chris Kleindienst, co-owner of Left Bank Books, where she has worked for 46 years. For 25 years, she was a columnist for the Lesbian and Gay News Telegraph and Vital Voice. She co-founded Red Tomatoes, St. Louis's first women's music production company, Team St. Louis, and the St. Louis Anti-Violence Project. Chris has been active in numerous other local LGBTQIA projects. Her anthology, This Is What Lesbian Looks Like, won a Lambda Literary Award. So thank you, Chris, for being here. Gilbert Pinella is MA. He is born and raised in Puerto Rico, lives in St. Louis since 1991, currently the communications manager, Cortex Innovations Community, board member, Promo, Missouri History Museum Subtext District Commissioner, MC, host, producer, U.S. Air Force veteran. Thank you very much for your service. And Webster University alumni. That makes me tired, both of you already. And then we go to Jay Shepard, they, them pronouns, is a 27-year-old Black, queer, non-binary flower boy passionate about the liberation and healing of all Black people, twerking and staying hydrated. Jay is the abolitionist organizer at Action St. Louis. Jay daydreams about the abolition of police, prisons, and a world where Black people are thriving and not just surviving. And aren't we all? Welcome, Jay. Welcome, Gilberto, and welcome, Chris. Thank you all very much for being here. And Ian, we're going to start out with you asking the first question.
So thanks everyone for being here today. To start off, I wanted each panelist to think about their memories of Pride in the St. Louis region, and maybe to share what have been some particularly impactful or meaningful moments for them. Maybe if we could start with Chris.
Sure. That is almost half a century for me to think through. And I have been thinking these days leading up, and it is the earliest happy, fun, and a little bit silly memory I have is of one of the early prides that was marching through from Forest Park and around through the Central West End down Euclid and back to the park. There was at that time, Our World 2 was the gay and lesbian bookstore was open at that time. And the owner, Bill Cordes, and I were friends, and Pride asked us to be the parade marshals. So we sat in the back of a convertible and, you know, got about 3 blocks into the parade when the convertible broke down, and Bill and I pushed it to the side and walked the rest of the way. So that was my kind of big fun moment, my earliest fun moment with Pride. And I have others, I don't know if you, that are probably a little more grounded. I don't know if somebody else wants to share first, one of theirs.
Well, I'll go. First of all, I want to thank you for including me in this panel. Obviously, I'm not born and raised here in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm from Puerto Rico, so my experience with Pride, the Pride activities here have been limited for the last 20 years or so that I've been living here. One of my fondest memories, like the first time that I had the opportunity to participate in the Urban Air, the first Urban Air that Promo hosted at the Centene Center for the Arts. I think that experience of Pride gave me an inspiration to make sure that I cite or I participate or support organizations that are really working towards equity, inclusion, advocacy, and rights for all, especially LGBTQ people of color, and marginalized communities. So I remember that to this day, that Urban Air, it was a great celebration. I'm looking forward. We hosted Urban Air last year at Cortex for the first time, and we were really happy with how things went. And I'm looking forward to entice or encourage our new president and CEO and the staff at Cortex to keep supporting anything that we can celebrate when it's Pride Month. So maybe Jay wants to share now a little bit of your experience.
Yeah, I can go next. Thanks for having me on this panel. I think my favorite memory of Pride was actually this photo where we planned an action to really, it was called Not Our Pride SDL. And we planned this action to really center the Black, trans, and queer lives that were lost that year. So we had a coffin for the unnamed and misgendered. And we marched through the parade. And really, people just applauded us. We talked about the disparities of trans women of color. And we had these demands that we demanded more from Pride St. Louis, demanded more that they bring trans Black folks onto their board, that they not have the police included in the parade, because that doesn't make many of our Black community feel safe. So we marched through the parade and had a standing ovation from folks. And then we went through the festival portion, and it was like a complete 360, 180, or whatever. It was completely horrible. And they kind of like pushed us out of that space. But really that was a chance to demand more from our Pride Parade, because the legacy is of a riot. And I think that we need to always remember that, and we need to be fighting for more, because folks are still dying and folks are still have extreme discrimination against them.
I would like to second that, Jay. In fact, the memory I had thought about sharing today of a more serious nature was exactly that year of the Pride Parade. And I was part of the Metro Trans Umbrella Group contingent, and we had opened up our contingent to include QT-POC because, as I recall, the Pride Committee had not granted you an official place in the parade. And then what happened was that we all got pushed to the back of the proverbial bus. We were almost the very last in the parade. And I completely remember what it was like going past the reviewing stand. I had my phone on and camera, and I was in the cab, which I think you can the remarks that were made were openly derisive of trans people, and those were recorded. And my partner Jay and I, Jarek Steele, put that up on social media, and it could no longer be really denied that there was a serious problem with the structure of the Pride Committee at that time, and really had been over many, many years. So it was very, and I'm sitting there with my cisgendered white skin privilege, and it felt really made to feel terrible. And I could only imagine what the rest of the folks in that group, and really in the entire area, were feeling, people of color and trans people. And so, some stuff happened from that, some stuff needed to happen. I think what fell short there was that they didn't push, there has not been a sustained response from the Pride Committee to really examine what their systemic challenges are in terms of racism and gender issues. And so that, I feel like, was a turning point in Pride, and it needed to happen.
Yeah,
I do agree. I think that now we have an opportunity to move forward, to really collectively work together as different organizations and put our differences aside. And this is a moment to be able to collaborate. I often feel that I'm in the ocean by myself as a Latino person of color trying to advocate. So I'm glad that I saw that sign that you had. I was in the parade with promo last year, so I didn't get to see the sign, and I didn't get to see that controversy because I think we were ahead of we were one of the first coming through. So I'm glad to see that the Latino voice was also included and in appropriate language. And I'm looking forward to see what next year Pride will look like as we continue to move forward in making sure that we are inclusive.
Yeah, I just want to point out that was in 2015, so it wasn't.
Oh, that was 2015. Okay, sorry.
So I think that you all are sort of leaning into this next question, but I want to kind of ask it so that it's out there in this recorded forum, and then we can kind of continue this conversation. But we think that Pride is really both a party atmosphere, certainly, but it also has its place for protest, as we've been talking. What do all of you think about the relationship between these two aspects of Pride? How can we mold them in such a way that Pride really does make a difference in the coming years? And again, looking forward to next year, how can we make this the voices of all parts of the LGBTQIA+ communities be heard? Who wants to start?
Roberto?
Okay, well, I think, in my own personal opinion, I think that Pride, and it is you are protesting, not just partying, because you can be self-expressed, right? What better form of protesting the status quo than being yourself? Seeing all the different aspects of what gender identity is about, not just what people think or what media portrays that we are. I mean, we're everything from, military guys to bears to pansexuals to transgender. So I think that the protest part of it is that self-expression that we can bring to the table, and then be political. Why be ashamed? I mean, it's shameful, and I think that it's a learning lesson for organizations to try to whitewash what we can use as a political movement and to make change happen. So I think that the self-expression part, it's a party, it's a celebration, But as the tagline says, you know, the first Pride was a riot. And it has so many subliminal messages there, because a riot can be a fun celebration, but it also indicates that you are taking action against a system, an oppressive system. So self-expression to me is very important. And we need to see it all. And we should be supportive and not be, even within our own cliques and circles in the LGBTQIA plus community, we should be intentional about equity and inclusion. Chris, you want to jump in, or somebody, Jay?
Sure. I couldn't agree with you more, Gilberto. You know, from the first, the Pride parades were political acts, and it was extremely risky for many, many years for basically anyone to show up and march. You know, in the first one, there was at least one person marching with a paper bag over her head because she was a school teacher, and there was no way that she would have her job come Monday if she had been seen. So, and that's just one example of, you know, hundreds of people. So just to come out and be in the parade, come to the festival is definitely a political act. It's also an act of survival for so many people, and the opportunity to be somewhere among people that you feel community with is really groundbreaking. I know that going to Pride for the first time is like this huge rite of passage for many queer people, and still. So, and you know, so it has gravity to it. It has power and significance. And I love that you said intentional. That it needs to be intentional, Gilberto. The other piece of that, of course, is community. It's like, you know, the love part, the laughter part. We deserve to live fully realized lives, and our so much of us is completely shut down in the mainstream by the mainstream culture. So Pride is this really significant place for just being able to be who we are and let our guard down a little bit. I think the and I'll stop. The thing that has continually sort of disappointed me with Pride is, in St. Louis and probably everywhere, is the tendency for it to get more and more corporate and more sanitized. And you know, it's been explicitly said numerous times in these last several years, no politics, no, you know, absolutely not. We can't do it. We'll risk our legal status, et cetera, et cetera. But if there ever was a more important place and, you know, opportunity to speak to your people and organize them, this is it. You know, even back when AIDS was the thing that everyone was on everyone's mind and we were dealing with, that, you know, that it was critical at a gathering like that to use it for the survival of our community. So that's, I'll leave it there. I'll let Jay speak.
Thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, our identities are political. Like, we can't separate that. Queer and trans identities are political. Like, our existence is a political act of resistance. So any way we show up, whether that's in a protest or in a party form, it's an act of resistance, and it is a protest in and of itself. I think that Pride, as was stated before, you know, started out as a riot, and like we always have to commemorate that, as well as like celebrate. I think that joy is the central part of it, and joy feels like a protest too. Yeah, I think that what better time to organize, what better time to build, what better time to have community than have it all be there, and like have a time to actually think about your history, have a time to actually think about the injustices that folks are facing within the community. What better time to shift than at Pride, you know, when we are all out here being visible and having the space to love and support each other.
So we're at a really interesting historical moment right now, obviously. We're living in the age of COVID-19, which has made us totally rethink how we come together as a community. So many Pride celebrations in St. Louis and around the country have been canceled or rescheduled or moved online. And then this is also coinciding with a renewed movement for racial justice and for Black lives. So I'd be interested in getting everyone's take about what Pride means this year, in this time, and how we can use this moment to sort of think about what Pride means and how we should move forward.
I can go. So right now, what we're seeing in St. Louis from a bunch of organizers who are involved in the current uprising is for Pride to be canceled until Black trans lives matter. So that looks like taking to the streets and marching and demanding more of Pride, but also like demanding that Black trans lives matter. Like this is like a statement of love, right? It's affirmation. And until then, we can't have this corporate celebration of Pride without acknowledging that and without doing something about it, right? Yeah, so that piece also, and it's also with joy too. So that one action that recently happened in Flower Boy was a march, and then also a ball where we celebrated the history of the Black ball scene, and we had moments of joy while trying to stay 6 feet apart-ish, with masks on, of course. And that's kind of what I've been seeing and taking part in right now.
I think that my own personal opinion, the most exciting part of the time period that we live in right now, which is so tragic with COVID-19 and everything that's happening, is the opportunity that we have now to recognize the past. I mean, I not too long ago was sitting at a concert, and I'm going to call them out because I have to. So I apologize. Well, I'm not apologetic, but I'm going to call them out. I was sitting at a concert, a Gateway Men's Chorus concert, which I supported the organization so much. And it was in honor of Stonewall, 1969, the riot, so forth and so on. The commentator who was acting as a news reporter, you know, maybe it was because it was the language that they used at the time, but I thought that because we need to recognize the fact that people of color were essential and instrumental in making Stonewall happen, I was very offended by his call to say, oh, a woman say, are you having enough of this? And then, you know, that's the person that started the riot. They didn't acknowledge, you know, Marsha P. Johnson. They didn't acknowledge Sylvia Rivera. And then you see it later if you had the opportunity to see that documentary on Netflix with about Marsha P. Johnson, how Sylvia Rivera was booed by the mainstream gay community because she was a transgender person of color. And this is the same person that was willing to go to jail, fight to the end for all of us to have rights now. So I think that we have an exciting opportunity right now to be very intentional. I will continue saying that word, be very intentional in inclusion, because as a Latinx person, I still feel that I am outside of the community, even with my brothers and sisters from the African American community, from the Black community. And it is always, we're always in one corner. And maybe it is because we also have to show up and we have to get motivated and we have to make sure that we are not ashamed of expressing our voices, even with an accent or not. But we have an exciting opportunity right now to really make change happen, collaborate with groups, and we all in the LGBTQIA plus community have to be inclusive, acknowledge our history. Black trans lives matter for real, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have Stonewall, we wouldn't have the Pride celebrations that we have right now. So I'm excited to see, even though we're going through this crisis right now, I'm excited to see how the future looks as we continue to move forward as a community.
Absolutely. It's kind of getting chills listening to you, Gilberto. This is a revolutionary moment in time all over the globe. And we are definitely being tested. I think of it sometimes as, especially, how defining the things have been. It seems, first COVID really forced us to our knees in an immediate, literal, like life or death thing. And then, of course, life or death things were expressed around the vicious police murders of Black people in this country. And so here we are at this moment, and like one day we're sort of all doing what we do, and the next day we are given only the backpack of everything we've been and done to this day. And that's what we have to work with to figure out this entirely new seeming challenge, even though what led to it is centuries old. And so it's like, oh, I have these things. This is what I've done. This is what I can use. And maybe it's not enough. So how are we going to, we have to collaborate. We have to honor all of us, the least of us in terms of enfranchisement, the most fragile are, have always been the strongest, the leaders, and the people who did the work for the rest of us. And, this really is truly a revolutionary moment. 1969 was a revolutionary moment. That's when Stonewall happened. That's when a whole lot of other stuff happened. The civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the feminist movement, Left Bank Books opened in the middle of that. We're in that same kind of moment right now. We have such opportunity here, such opportunity, but this kind of revolutionary change is itchy and uncomfortable. It's scary, it's exhausting, but it is worth every minute of it. It is worth every minute. And what we do this year is going to have an impact on stuff for years to come. We really have, I think, we've all these parallel tracks of like liberation movements and other kinds of political work that how it's going to work is that we are going to come together. The intersectionalities that, especially people of color have emphasized are so critical right now. So pride doesn't look like pride because we can't be in the streets together in that way, but people are in the streets and in other ways right now this month, and queer people are part of that in a way that we've never been before, and that's significant.
I think it might be time to take some questions from the audience. So one of our audience members asks, I remember those first spectacular Pride parades. I remember, this recalls what you were saying, Chris, I remember a large number of teachers who participated could only do so by wearing masks so that they would not lose their jobs. Most of them were extravagantly costumed clowns. Can you speak to the place of costume and even pose as both a necessary and chosen stance over the last decades? How does that relate to where we are now? So anyone have any thoughts on that? the deep history of Pride and this habit of people having to conceal their identities, put on costumes?
It's such a wonderful question to think about because there's no one answer to it. And costume and showing your true self, it's like, which is it? And of course, having to wear a paper bag over your head to obliterate your identity to be able to show up, that is very clear, you know, that what I like to think of as the pageantry in Pride that has emerged over the years, you know, that I always love the balloon contingent because they're just so fabulous and wonderful. It's such a happy thing. But we do, you know, we do kind of get to be who we are. And we also get to do some theater to sort of mirror back to the mainstream culture what the whole country is in a way. It's just, yeah, they don't always appreciate it, but I think it's really significant.
You know, I did not. My first Pride Parade experience was in New York City, of course, and I did not realize that here in Missouri we had to walk with bags over our heads because we had to make sure that we didn't lose our jobs. And you know, it is a shame. I'm glad that in the face of adversity, people found a way to still participate, to still show their pride, and to still say, I'm going to forge change moving forward. So you know, it's remarkable to me just to think, like, I never even thought about somebody concealing their identity because they were afraid that they would get fired. And you know, it's remarkable that all these years later, just the Supreme Court, you know, approved or passed that non-discrimination of LGBTQ people at the national level. So now you can be yourself. I was in the military. I was in the Air Force. I dared not to go to a Pride parade with my military uniform when I served. So, but I had a different mindset at that time as well. So it is remarkable. It's eye-opening for me to hear that we had to conceal our identities, because I believe that Pride is always about self-expression anyways. So you can be as scandalous as you want or as conservative as you want to be. But I never thought about it from that perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And now it's at this perspective that, like, we're cute and fun and want to, like, flaunt balloons and, like, makeup and be cute, you know? Like, yeah, queer and trans folks we show off who we are, you know? We don't, we definitely take pride. It's called pride, right in who we are. And, like, lately it's like, I'm gonna come in drag, or I'm gonna, like, people show up to protest in drag now. And I think that's, like, also commemorating the history of it. And just, like, flaunting who they are.
Right, here's another question from the audience. Thanks for the great conversation from these wonderful thought leaders and activists. I do think that there should be a place for all voices in the LGBTQIA community. How might we come together as a community in a more ongoing way beyond just Pride? So the rest of the year, when it's not Pride Fest or Pride Month, what are some ways to come together as a community and to acknowledge the community's diversity?
Well, I'm an organizer, so at the heart of organizing is base building and relationship building and getting to know each other. So I think that there's opportunity always to be in deep connection and deep community with folks that shared identity, which could look like sharing a meal, which could look like having a conversation, right? I also like a lot of times respond to really what's going on in our climate. So right now that's coming together to show that Black trans lives matter. After polls happened, me and some folks, KB and just some other organizers and activists in St. Louis came together, and we would, in the Grove, we would just drum and play music and just like remembering beats. There's KB in that photo. And so for 49 days, for the 49 people we lost in Pulse, we came to the Grove and we made music. And that was community building. That was a chance to come together outside of Pride, but also like to like think about those lives that were lost and also like have some joy. I think that responding to what's happening and also having chances to eat and dance and listen to each other is kind of what we need as a community.
Mhm. I go, so I take it from the other angle too. It's how willing we are to be involved, infiltrate per se, organizations that are like working, like for example, there's my involvement with Promo as a board member is very intentional because I believe that we need to demonstrate that we are a group that is inclusive of all people here in Missouri. So I am very actively participating, not just as a board member and somebody that's just sitting at the table because I represent a demographic, but I am actually pursuing and talking and challenging the board all the time to make sure that we are intentional in including the voices of Latinx communities and foreign-born communities that are very shy here in St. Louis, that they don't want to participate. So any opportunity that I have to be on a board where I can be myself, that I can be an advocate, it is another opportunity to just not just be with community, but then get our tentacles out, infiltrate, and make sure that our voices are heard in places where we can build allies so they can help us with our intentions, with our agendas as we move forward. So that's how I see it.
Thank you, Gilberto and Jay. I think that I want to say to the white people out there who are hopefully watching this or who will watch it, that in answer to that question, that we are incredibly lucky that there are people like the both of you doing this work and being willing to wade into the deep end of unexamined white doo-doo and basically show up. And what we as white queer people need to do is also show up. And throughout the year, that, like, it's implied here, it's just not a box you tick off. I went to Pride, I was, around Black people, I was around trans people. I'm so cool. That's not even the beginning of substantive change. And I think, it can't be pointed out too often that, you don't really have the privilege or right really to just go off on your own and think, oh, I got mine, I'm okay. I don't need to expand my tent. That, was made abundantly clear in Germany under Hitler. And that's a lesson. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer there, but I actually think that that's one of the many lessons of history that we have. And so throughout the year, what that means is really all of us show up, all of us do the work. It maybe you don't feel comfortable in one thing, choose another thing until you get comfortable in that other thing. And the organizations in St. Louis that deal with LGBTQIA issues that are predominantly white need to do their homework throughout the year. They need to be the places that shows the leadership to the rest of the community and open their doors, do things that have actual impact regardless of what the intent was. Intent is not enough, impact is what we need. And it's not, I just want to say also, it's not a, sometimes people feel like, oh, it's a should, it's like, I should go to church more often or something. It's like, I should, be anti-racist, or I should this or not. But you know what? It's actually, in my life, the best and most rewarding moments have come from when I stepped outside of my little tiny box and showed up somewhere else. And I can't imagine not doing that. It would be, for me, like, I'm a city girl. It would be like living in an extreme suburb. It just would be emotional and cultural death. So really all you have to do is show up all the time, somewhere. That's what we need.
Well, I want to thank everybody that has, all of our panelists, and for the folks who are out there listening. And I'm sure that maybe more questions will come to you. And certainly one of the ways that we can continue this dialogue is there at the contact info that you see on the slide, gatewaytopride@mohistory.org. You might want to take a photo of this slide or commit it to memory. But there are many, many ways. I feel so privileged to be a part of the Missouri Historical Society and their desire to become as inclusive and diverse as we possibly can. And it's baby steps. It's always being active and being involved. And one of the ways is programming just like this. And there are many more opportunities for us to continue these kinds of conversations in the future. And some of them will be virtual. And at some point, we're going to be able to see each other face to face. But in the meantime, please contact us. That Gateway to Pride email will come to Ian and I, and we can get back in touch with you if you have materials, things you want to donate, stories you have to tell, ways that you want to connect, if you have ideas for programming, whatever it is. We are willing and wanting to do that, not just in June, but every day of the year. And so again, thank you to Jay and to Gilberto and Chris. And we are extremely grateful for this conversation, and we hope that it's just the beginning of much change in this community. And so
Thank
I think
you,
that's
Sharon. Yep, I'm coming back on. Thanks, Sharon and Ian. I'll just add to the chorus of thank yous. Thank you again to Gilberto and Jay and Chris. So appreciate having you all here today and taking the time. And thank you, of course, to everyone who tuned in today for being here and a part of this conversation. We really appreciate you. Just a reminder to look for that tab that should have popped up in your browser and let us know what you think. Just a very short survey to share your thoughts with us, so we can take those into consideration for the next time. And you'll see on your slide here some of the upcoming presentations, the next few coming up, which again, you can find also at mohistory.org or on the Missouri History Museum Facebook page. So thank you again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.